They fired her in front of everyone, not quietly, not with dignity. They made it a spectacle, something everyone in the office would remember for a very long time. Her name, Julia, her crime, dreaming too big, her punishment, public humiliation. It all began on a seemingly ordinary Wednesday morning. Julia had worked at the company for nearly 7 years. She was the kind of employee every company needed, but never fully appreciated. Reliable, precise, deeply knowledgeable about clients and products. She wasn't flashy. She wasn't loud. She wasn't the kind to engage in office politics. But what no one realized was that Julia had become the backbone of the company's most profitable accounts. She knew the clients' birthdays, their buying habits, their preferences. She wasn't just an employee, she was a living, breathing bridge between the company and its top customers. But that didn't matter to her boss, Marcus. Marcus was the flashy type. He craved the spotlight, adored big speeches, and loved hiring young, trendy workers who filled the office with noise and gossip. He thought Julia was too quiet, too old-fashioned, too replaceable. And so, that morning, during the weekly staff meeting, with every employee gathered, Marcus stood in front of the room, holding Julia's termination letter. Today, he began, with a smug smile, we're making room for new talent, people with bold visions and modern ideas. He turned toward Julia, eyes glinting with cruelty. Julia, he continued, thank you for your years of service. But we've decided to part ways, effective immediately. Gasps echoed through the room. Some stared in disbelief. Others looked down, ashamed but too afraid to speak. Julia sat still, every eye on her. Her hands were steady, her expression calm. But inside, her heart pounded, not from fear, not from sadness, but from something far more dangerous. Clarity. Because what they didn't know was that Julia was already hiding a plan that would completely change the course of events. She gathered her belongings in silence. No one offered to help. Her so-called friends suddenly found their phones very interesting. As she walked out, Marcus's words rang in her ears. Some people just aren't meant for this business anymore. But Julia, she wasn't crushed. In fact, she felt strangely light, because while they believed they'd fired her, they had just freed her. That night, sitting in her modest apartment surrounded by old client notes and half-finished coffee mugs, Julia began to map out her plan. She wasn't thinking about revenge in the way others might. She wasn't plotting to destroy anyone out of spite. Her plan wasn't about anger. It was about survival, about justice, about proving to herself that everything she had built wasn't dependent on them. And so, she began. She spent weeks reaching out, quietly, privately, to former clients. Not to poach them, not at first. She simply checked in, asked how they were doing, sent friendly emails, reminded them of birthdays, milestones, and special events, things no one at her old company would ever remember. And slowly, something incredible began to happen. Clients started replying. They thanked her for remembering them. Some complained about the new, inexperienced reps at the company. Others mentioned missed deadlines, poor service, forgotten requests. Julia listened, carefully, patiently, taking notes, smiling to herself, because the countdown had begun. Visual suggestion: 3 months until Revenge Day. As the weeks turned into months, Julia kept building. She quietly registered her own consulting business. Nothing flashy, just a clean, professional brand with one focus: personalized client service. She didn't advertise loudly. She didn't launch social media campaigns. She let her results speak. One by one, her former clients began reaching out, not because she asked, but because they missed her, because they trusted her, because they needed her. But the shock didn't stop there. Marcus and his new team began noticing something alarming. The numbers were falling. Key accounts were slipping away. Clients stopped responding to their emails. Projects were mysteriously delayed. Revenue began to dip. Panic spread through the office, but no one knew why. Or rather, they didn't want to admit it. Julia, meanwhile, stayed quiet. She didn't gloat. She didn't announce her victories. She simply worked. Day by day, Client by client, she rebuilt her career, stronger, wiser, free. Visual suggestion: 1 month until full collapse. As word of Julia's success began to spread, something else happened. Other employees, those who had once laughed at her, ignored her, or stayed silent during her firing, started reaching out. They wanted advice, guidance. Some even asked if she was hiring. Julia never turned them away. But she didn't forget. She remembered who had mocked her, who had stayed silent, and she made sure that any partnerships were on her terms. Always respectful, always professional, but with boundaries as strong as steel. And then the final blow came. Marcus's biggest client, the one that accounted for nearly 40% of the company's annual revenue, left. Not quietly, not politely. They issued a public statement, praising Julia by name for her unmatched service and announcing their exclusive partnership with her new firm. The news hit like an earthquake. Industry blogs covered the story. Competitors celebrated the downfall. Marcus? He was forced to step down, fired from the very company where he had once humiliated Julia. At that moment, Julia's phone rang. It was an old co-worker, breathless with shock. "Julia," they whispered, "did you really steal all their customers?" Julia smiled. Her answer was calm, steady, and chillingly elegant. "No," she said softly, "I didn't steal anyone. They simply followed the person who valued them the most." Her story spread far beyond their city. She became a symbol of quiet strength, of smart, patient revenge, of the power that comes from knowing your worth. And she never once raised her voice. She never once played dirty. She simply built something better, something lasting. Her story isn't just about revenge, it's about resilience, about never letting others define your worth, about the quiet power of staying true to yourself. Now I ask you, if you were in Julia's place, what would you have done? Would you have stayed silent and waited for your moment? Or would you have walked away forever? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found her story inspiring, there's another tale, one even more shocking, about a woman who turned betrayal into her greatest victory. Watch it now.